So former President Donald Trump is going to trial today. The trial starts today for rape allegations? Let's talk about it. Former President Donald Trump is being sued by this advice columnist, a former advice columnist, Carroll. So here are the things that essentially you need to know. Jury selection begins on Tuesday, which is today, and the sexual assault and defamation civil suit brought against former President Donald Trump by the writer Carroll last year. Now, Carroll is accusing Trump of causing significant pain and suffering, lasting psychological harms, loss of dignity, and invasion of privacy. Trump's lawyers argue that the statute under which Carroll brought the assault claims violates due process, which I agree with. This actually I agree with. And calls the defamation claims baseless, essentially. So let's talk about what's going on here. So what's the core of this lawsuit? Carroll claims that Trump blanked her in a changing room in a department store in Manhattan in the early 1990s. So we're talking about 3 decades ago. As a result, she had all this pain and suffering, and, she's now filing suit saying that this is, been horrible to her. Carroll's suit claims, adding that she has been unable to have sexual or romantic relationships with men since that day. So this was essentially traumatizing for her. Now, Trump's lawyers are expected to argue that Carroll's nearly 30-year-old claims cannot be proved, and that Carroll was motivated by potential book sales and publicity. Now, she did actually write these allegations in a book, and she was selling that book, and that's kind of where all this kind of blew up from. Now, the first thing you got to be thinking is, well, what about the statute of limitations, right? This is something that happened 30 years ago. So if it happened 30 years ago, how can she sue now? It just seems so far-fetched. But that's because New York changed its laws to kind of allow these lawsuits to happen, I think, last year. Here's the news report about it.
Adult sex abuse survivors in New York have a second chance to file lawsuits against their alleged abusers.
CBS 2's Natalie Dudridge says a bill signed by the governor today gives them 1 year to file.
It is a victory for justice, and it is long overdue.
Governor Kathy Hochul signed a new bill that allows victims of sex abuse to sue regardless of how long ago the alleged crime happened. A similar window was already given to children under 18. Now, under the Adult Survivors Act, victims over 18 will be given 12 months to file.
For this 1 year period, lawsuits will not be barred by the statute of limitations.
Some critics and lawmakers had argued the longer a plaintiff waits, the more difficult to hold a fair trial as evidence and memories fade. But a victims advocacy group says this does not affect the legal process.
It doesn't change the rules of evidence. It doesn't favor the plaintiff in any way, shape, or form. It simply opens the courtroom doors, and that's what's so important.
Current law allows adults up to 20 years to bring lawsuits for abuse. But for survivors from many years ago, they will have this one-time 1 year window to get justice. That window opens 6 months from now, giving victims time to decide what to do. Natalie Dudridge, CBS 2 News.
Now, this is not the first time someone's been sued under these extensions of the statute of limitations. Kevin Spacey famously was charged against Anthony Rapp when Anthony Rapp sued Spacey for allegedly misconduct when he was a child. And Kevin Spacey beat the rap. The jury found that he wasn't liable in that particular case because it was just so hard to prove. What happened with Spacey was happening in like 1986. So maybe, Carroll's allegations may be a little bit more ripe. It's, instead of 86, it's like 2006, but it's still 30 years ago. And just like with any litigator or any lawsuit, you have to understand the longer away from the event, the harder it's going to be able to prove your case. And at a point, it becomes unfair to even bring the case because it's kind of like, really this happened 30 years ago. But New York State said, hey, for 1 year, if this happened to you, you have your shot. You have your shot for this year. And Carroll took it. Now, this is not the first time Carroll has sued Trump. See, Carroll has sued Trump twice so far, and both matters are still active. The first suit came in November 2019, the allegations of defamation, after Carroll published an article in New York Magazine recounting the allegations. I'm not going to say the other word. Trump responded by saying Carroll was lying. That's what everybody says, right? And going to observe that she's not my type. This suit was quickly tied up in disputes about the proper role of the Department of Justice in defending the then president. It still has not gone to trial. So that defamation suit, if that's all she's got, he's saying that she's lying and that she's not my type. That seems like a loser to me. But, who knows? The second suit was filed in November 2022 under this New York Adult Survivor Act. Because remember, they said, hey, you got a year. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna sue under this 1 year. Now, I think it's important to get the full history about what's been happening with this case. See, Carroll actually tried to sue Trump before. And here is the article read. Carroll has sued Trump twice so far, and both matters are still active. The first suit was November 2019, where essentially Carroll was saying that, hey, Donald Trump defamed him when he said, what did he say? He said her allegations were false and that she was lying. And that he said that she's actually not even my type. So she now is suing for defamation, saying that that defamed her, which I don't really get. Like, all right, well, if he says you're not his type, that's an opinion. That's his own, that's literally an opinion. And he says you're lying, that again is an opinion, unless you could prove that it to be true. So I don't know, because remember, defamation is lies that you can prove, right? You have to be able to prove it to be false. How do you prove that you're not his type, right? How do you prove that? How do you prove that, that this did happen? Again, you have the other lawsuit, but it's 30 years ago. So unless you can prove it, that's where it gets. The second suit was this advocacy suit filed in November 2022, again, under this New York Adult Survivors Act. And that opened the window so he can be sued for this. So that's how we got the two lawsuits. So one defamation and this other one. So they seem to combine it and say, we're going to trial on both the defamation claims and these other claims of the past rape allegations. Now, I want to bring us to the New York Post because I think this is an important piece to this story, is that, see, in both lawsuits, Carroll alleged that it was sometime in 1995 or 1996 when she bumped into Trump on Fifth Avenue when this all happened. So we don't even really know when this happened, right? It could have happened in 1995. It could have happened in 1996. But she's saying it happened. Now, that's no shade to a survivor, right? It's hard to remember like when exactly did this happen. But that, again, it just hurts your case if you can't tell me, hey, this happened in 1995, even give me the month. You may not need to give me the day, but you got to give me something more close. It's 95, 96. Hey, it happened sometime in the 90s. And again, we are talking about 30 years ago. And I think in this particular case, it's going to be very, very hard for a jury to come out in favor of Miss Carroll, even if this, happened. And because all the evidence that we essentially have is a he said, she said. She's saying, right? Let's just be very clear. She's saying this happened. He's saying it didn't. The evidence that we've just seen is she's saying he said the Access Hollywood tape. I don't think that helps her, right? So what? That doesn't mean he did this to you. There are other women who are going to say that he assaulted them, but that doesn't mean he assaulted her, right? That's ridiculous. Just because he said, I assaulted these two women, that means he also assaulted you. That doesn't make any sense. And I just want to point out for the defamation piece of it, if you think about it, Trump made those comments when he was president. So I'm not even too sure if he can be sued for those comments because he made them while he was president when he said these things were nonsense. So, I'll keep up with this case, but it looks like a nothing burger, but she could win. I've been wrong before. But let me know in the comment section how you feel about this lawsuit. Do you think she's going to be successful? Do you think that Trump is in trouble? It's really unspecified damages. And, she's had this opportunity. New York State said, you got a year if this happened to you to bring your lawsuit. She bought it. And, now we get to see where it goes. Now, very important part. Trump is not going to appear in the lawsuit for two reasons. Number one, the plaintiff's attorneys, her attorneys said they're not going to call him. And Trump's attorney said they're not going to call him. So I don't know if that hurts or helps this case because a lot of times juries want to hear like, hey, did you do this? And when would you get up there and say no? But Trump is saying that he won't testify. We'll see what happens. We'll see if that helps or hurts his case. But this case is going to trial and it's starting today. Let me know how you feel about this case in the comment section. My name is Nate the Lawyer and I'll see you next one. Peace.